Good morning, good evening, depending upon what part of the world you're in. If it's Friday, you know it's the CEO series where we bring together the most interesting people from across the globe, global leaders, influencers, and disruptors. Today, our guest is world famous crime expert and good friend, Sunny Slaughter. She's the founder and managing principal of Sunny Slaughter Consulting. She brings 30 plus years of consultancy and expertise as a TV analyst and a recurring expert on Court TV, Law and Crime Network. She facilitates her signature training called CRIDE for law enforcement leaders across the globe. She uses the term coin, lens, language, and law, which is what we'll talk about, as a litigation expert and consultant to opine expert witness reports. She's a fellow at the Morehouse School of Medicine, Satcher Health Leadership Institute, and semifinalist in the Robert Woods Johnson Culture of Human Health Leaders. And with that, I'd like to welcome our guests for this Friday, Sunny Slaughter. How are you?
Ron, Mr. Ron Thomas, let me take this now. How are you? Look, you know how excited I was, right? To come on here and have a conversation with the Ron Thomas. Woo!
That's
It's
that's
so
the Jim
good to talk to you.
that's the Jim Moy influence. I
Yeah.
think he kind of branded that piece. But you know what? I look at your career, and I've been knowing you from the time on Shree's show.
Yeah.
That's is when we were, got to meet. And I look at where you are today, and I always like to start the show. Walk us through that journey because that's always got to be interesting. You are recognized as one of the top crime experts. You're commenting on many of the most significant crimes, a frequent guest on all the top programs, specifically Court TV, covering the latest high profile cases in the news. Walk us through that journey.
So I had an interesting uh, childhood in the sense that I'm the oldest of three daughters. I come from working class parents. My mother at one time worked for the state police, and she was a private investigator. My father worked for New Jersey Transit. But as the oldest of three daughters, we lived good, but rather simple. And my going into my senior year of high school, I was at Notre Dame High School, and it was expensive. So my parents were trying to figure out how to send my younger siblings to my two sisters to private school and me. And I said, "Oh, I'll just go to public school."
Mm.
And I had never gone to public school ever. Okay. And but when I went to register, they said the classes were full and it was overcrowding, and I had more than enough credits to graduate, right? So I decided to go. They sent me to night school my senior year of high school to
Really?
complete, yes, not to complete classes, but you know how you have to be in school for so many hours? I
Yeah.
just did hours. And then I applied for a full-time job at the New Jersey Division of Gaming Enforcement. And I
Oh,
got the job. And I worked initially in the word processing pool for about a month or so. And then I saw that there was a job in the front office with the director, who, is the assistant attorney general in that team. And the ladies in the word processing pool said, "Oh no, they've never had anybody black in that office. No African American has ever worked there. And
mm,
you're young." And I was like, "Yeah, okay." And I do what I do. I started then, and I applied, and I received the job. So
mm.
I was the second assistant to the director, and we oversaw the gaming operations for New Jersey and worked with the Casino Control Commission and the boxing commissions. So I got my start very young, very early, and very uniquely, learning how to do indictments. Um,
Ooh.
I was overseeing all of the casino files, and it grew. I
Mm.
was always, as we talked about behind the scenes, I had this love of crime, and I would read
Yeah.
detective magazines and books as a very, very young girl. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes parents wouldn't want their kids to read some of the things that I was reading, but my mom, we would talk about it, debate about it. So it is always who I've been, and I think it has evolved. So,
Mm.
fast forward, everything that I have done in my life and in my career, um, I think was designed for me. I have
Wow.
taken every nugget along the way, all of the breadcrumbs. I have had great influence, support, and leaders like yourself and others who saw something that I didn't see,
Yeah.
who then invested in my growth, my development, my ability to learn. And they could tolerate the fact that I would say, no, I'm not doing it that way.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I was like, I'm
So,
not going to.
so you brought yourself to whatever situation that was. So when you talked, you and I talked earlier before we got online, and you were talking about the obsession is growing up with crime magazines, because I'm I'm always intrigued by people when they get here. What were the building blocks, even if you didn't know that those building blocks were there? But you started talking about the crime magazines and how you would read those and True Detective, and walk us through a little bit of that.
So it was the fact that something really bad could happen. And it seemed like it only happened to one person or in one community, but it really affected everything and everyone. The way that the detectives uh, investigated the case was always important. I followed their pattern and practice of how they did the interview, how they took notes, and all of those things were in the magazine, and the complexes and the photographs that were, not all the way gory, but the details. And I always said, I don't know if I would have done it that way. And
Yeah.
they probably should have talked to this person, and
Yeah.
I would have asked this question. So there was always that what question did they not ask? And
Okay.
how is it that people didn't see this in someone?
Yeah. The questions that they would ask, and you would kind of zero in on that. So in consulting, you always think about pre interview strategy. How are you going to interview someone? And for people that don't know, I am a crime show fanatic. When I finish work, I find a crime show and I'll sit there for hours and hours and watch it. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because I look at the way that the detectives interview and what questions would I have asked if I was in that situation. So it's amazing how these things come about. Now, last week's guest, Jim Moy, and I know he's listening now, he
Yes,
became a
yes.
lawyer. He became a lawyer because of Perry Mason,
Right.
which was probably the first kind of crime show there was in on TV.
Mhm.
So for someone that's coming up in college now, high school, whatever it is, and they have kind of an interest, but maybe their parents or families are saying, no, you go do this. You kind of stay true to that vision.
Yes. And I understand when a parent might say, don't, that this has too
Yeah.
much,
Yeah.
it's too gory, it's too sad. I am grateful that my mother, although she's no longer here to see all of the stuff I'm doing now, that she did not misdirect my purpose and path, because I think this is purposeful, and that she redirected it, and she understood what that was. And today, unlike before, Jim and I actually had this conversation about him watching Perry Mason. I was a Telly Savalas girl.
Okay.
Kojak, baby. You couldn't hit it better than Kojak. I mean, that he was the man. He was the man.
this is memory lane. This is not even work. This is memory lane. Yes.
So I was watching Kojak, and then I watched our little lady, when she would walk around Maine and solving crimes, and then there were so many. But today, one of the things that I think young people and everyone can learn from, and I'm not just saying it because I'm on there, but the Law and Crime Network and Court TV and shows like that, because they're actually different than the television that we watched of yesterday.
Yes.
Because these are real life, upfront crimes and cases and happening right away. And I see John is saying this helped him do the interview
John
skills.
South, very good friend of mine. Hey, John.
and like a crime writer. So one of the things is you get to hear the voices, perspective, and go through the cases as they unfold in court. One of the things that I have found very interesting, and you might too, is when we were watching those shows, we were watching the development of the crime and the law enforcement aspect.
Yeah.
And how it unfolded. So I am a law enforcement expert, instructor, training coordinator, and all those other things. But I am also a litigation expert. So when you talked about me writing the expert witness reports, I can go from on the scene to in the courtroom and take a case from the very beginning to the end.
Okay.
And the other day when I was on the show on the Law and Crime Network, we were behind the scenes. One of the hosts is actually from New Jersey, where I'm from. And he said, well, Sunny, I was an EMT. And I was like, get out of here. So I was an EMT in New Jersey too. In fact, I was one of the first 8 people in the entire state of New Jersey in 1987 to receive the New Jersey Public Safety Award for public service from the governor and from the attorney general. I saved 2 small children. So when you think about the way that crime is, people don't realize, and you have a show that is focused, like on CEOs and corporate Americas and human resources. The nuggets of what I do, which is why this is such an honor to be with you.
Yeah.
And what I do feeds into everything that everyone else does, and they don't ever see it that way. They don't, there is a disconnect because they think, well, that's not really related. And do we bring somebody in to talk about this or to talk about that? And all of it is connected. Everything is connected.
It's human interaction because, as you mentioned earlier, I do leadership development, HR development kind of across the globe. And one of the things that we talk about is building relationships. So you see the detective, they'll try and build a relationship with the person to get them to talk more. If I'm a first-time manager, I have to build that same relationship. So I don't really watch the show. Well, I watch it as entertainment, but I'm picking up nuggets that I can use in my work.
Right. Because so the people see me as one thing, but I actually do HR work. I'm the external compliance officer for a reentry program. And I talk about that relationship component, and I write policies. So a lot of my time, you see me on the show doing one thing, but I spend a lot of time writing policies, doing research. I have 3 P's: public safety, public health, and public relations.
Okay.
So the public safety that I do with my clients, like you do with yours, is about building the safety mechanisms on the policy side. Do you have the right policies in place? But you can't have the right policies in place unless you do what you and I do, and people don't connect it. You watch crime shows to be able to ask the right questions, to write policies that are effective regarding people's behavior requires you to be able to do what? ask the right questions. And the right questions are not the questions that everybody else is asking, the questions that people are not asking because they don't think that it's relevant.
Yeah. So I'm probably the only person that will watch these shows, and I've got a notepad that I'm making notes. So,
Yeah, you
anyway,
got to do
yeah.
it.
So, but anyway, that's what I do. I want to say hello to Dr. Johnny Parker and Neil. Neil, they run the show Shri on Sunday morning, and he's the host, guest host. That's how we connected. And my good buddy John Self, who was already a guest, and he's going to come back on again. So let's walk through. So you had this job and that's centered around Atlantic City. Kind of the gaming had just come in and all of that. How do you become a noted crime expert, whereby the CNN and the MSNBCs of the world, which is the crime network, Law and Order, and all those, not Law and Order, Law and Crime, will reach out to you to say, can you come on as a guest? And how do you handle that side of it?
So about 2008, I went from, well, I was in Alabama. We were just kind of talking about that too. And I was I did a lot of stuff on crime, domestic and sexual violence. I work with the entities, the statewide entities there. I was always a person that focused on that. But prior to that, the United States Navy, I was a federal women's program coordinator for the United States Navy on the non-appropriated side for the largest naval base, Norfolk, Virginia. Okay. But so all throughout my career, I've been doing things that have to do with this type of work. But in 2008, I became a law enforcement instructor and consultant for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. I went to a class, and I just went to the class to become a domestic violence instructor. And during the class, so, we were in class in school for a whole week, went to Atlanta and did that and it's the U.S. Department of Homeland Security Federal Law Enforcement Training Center called Flexi, right? And I went to class, we were doing that, and the supervisor in class, Alex Graves, law enforcement, former military man, designed the actual program. So that was the stroke of luck to actually get the person who created the program that have been doing it for DHS all these years. And as we were finishing class, he says, I want to talk to you. And then he pulls me aside and he says, would you be interested in becoming a law enforcement instructor for the program? And I was like, huh? I didn't even know that was even possible.
Yeah.
Just there trying to, get a little something. And I said, yes. So we talked later. And like a few weeks later, I was on a plane and in another city and learning to co-teach the domestic violence program. It's a whole manual and everything. So that's kind of how I got started. But Alex did something else unique for me. He made sure not only did I do the domestic violence program, but there were other things that he kept plugging me into. Okay. And he allowed me I am a law enforcement instructor and a member of ILETA, the International Law Enforcement and Executive Trainers Association.
Whoa.
And you can only people think that you can have a badge and do things. There are things, even if you have a badge, that you don't get to do, because people can be a law enforcement trainer and talk about an issue, but I am a law enforcement instructor. So I can teach in a classroom. I can teach on the academic level. That is different than I actually have the instructor credentials. Okay. So, and he kept shifting me around intentionally to the different spaces. I am also one of the few non-sworn persons allowed to take the Department of Homeland Security Drug Task Force Supervisor School. And I registered. I wasn't sure until I got to the door and started reading the email again at the DEA in Birmingham that it
Yeah.
said sworn law enforcement only. And then I panicked and got scared. And I said, oh my gosh, they're not going to let me in because I don't have a badge. Because there are some things that are only for people with a badge, only
Right.
sworn. And my police friends, they said, just go in there. Just go in there and tell them who you are. And I was like, that doesn't work, right? And I went in and they were like, who are you? Because these men had testified. The instructors had testified before Congress. This is really heavy stuff.
I can imagine.
And they were like, okay, you have to wait down here and over here to the side. And so about 15 minutes or so later, they came back and they said, you can come into the class. My heart dropped and I was like, oh, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I walked into a class of 32 white men. There were no other people of color, no women, and everybody had a badge and they had, they were sharpshooters. They had come from all across the country. This was a heavy, heavy class. Yeah. And so, I leveled up in the class though.
I got it. Yeah. You know what? Been there, done that. You're the only one there, and you look around and say, okay, cool. All right, we'll see how this works out.
But the stuff that I read for all of the years, and because I was plugged in different places, when they were talking about things, I really knew the cases. I had known things. And then, so I became command at the end of the, we have to run training scenarios. I became command and I ran the last training scenario involving a hostage situation and redirecting the men and the whole outline of, that was me.
I you know what, as you told that story, I was giving a speech in Dubai and someone was kind of hanging around after the speech was over. And they gave me their card and they said, I'd like your speech. I'd like to represent you. And my thought was, represent me doing what? Because I had no clue. So you talked about someone getting you to, seeing something in you and ask you to move forward and do something else. So sometimes in careers, we get these situations where somebody can see something and we don't see it. And on a lot of cases, people would have said, no, that's not for me. I'm not credentialed. I don't have the badge or whatever it is. And they would have turned back around and continued doing what they were doing. What was the mindset in trying to make that decision to say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and pursue it anyway? Even when I got in and saw the audience everybody looked different from me.
There has always been something in me, a little voice that said, you know what? You could actually do that. You could do this. You can. And I believe in being unboxed, unbossed, and unbought, and going against the grain and saying, we have across the world, we have kind of set into motion things where we say it has to be done this way. You have to have this paper. You have to do it this way because that's the way it's always been done. That's how people elevate. That's how people move about the world. And I believe in, I don't know whether it's faith or arrogance. Some people might say it's arrogance. I believe that it's faith, that I am on a path that was designed uniquely for me. And I am not going to be deterred. And even when it's no, the rejection is a part of the plan because I don't know what that other side is going to look like, but I am being purposely redirected and directed in a way that allows others to see and to say, you know what? That is not the only way. And you can do whatever you want to do. When I leave this earth, they're going to say, well done. Because I'm going to do it my way. And it's okay that you mess up and make mistakes because that is how I'm constantly learning. I learn from everyone. I watch your show. I watch you
Oh,
interview, and I listen to your guests.
yeah.
And like you're taking notes, and I take notes. I take notes in my head. Look at Neil. Neil, I'm glad
Neil,
you're feeling
see,
better.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. And
Thank you.
I believe that you can gather things in ways from folks that you never even imagined is possible. So the impossible is what um, I'm always trying to do, because people want to put you where they want you to be.
Yeah.
And look, I'm in my own lane. I'll be listening to my own music, doing my own things, and folks saying she can't do that. And I'm like, I'm gonna do it. I'm just
I'll
do it.
show you.
Yeah,
I'll show you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. My father told me something, and I never forget to this day. He said, always ask for everything you want. He said, there's three options. They're going to say no, they're going to say yes, or they say maybe. If it's a maybe, you convince them to yes. If it's a hard no, you still go back 100 times until you can flip them, and it doesn't matter. And I never ever forgot that. So when someone tells me no about something, I'm gonna maneuver and figure out another way. If they tell me maybe my story wasn't strong enough, and I'm gonna come back to them, but I will continually keep anchoring to that. So thank you for bringing that up. So the question I would ask you is that, seeing you on all these shows, you're doing this crime. The Murdoch trial is just, I'm obsessed with this. But that's another story. So how do you go from the big trial in the U.S., the Murdoch trial, which is over now, but they're going to another phase, to another case? How do you stay focused? Because in business, you're working on a project one,
Mhm.
and then I got to switch and do another project and get into that mindset. How do you mentally stay
And it,
focused?
it is a lot. It's a lot. But I will say, and let me back up and say this, because I don't think I answered this. How did I get on the shows? They called. I did not.
Yeah,
I started the year. I have been on television before.
yeah,
I've been on CNN's
yeah,
HLN After Dark.
yeah,
I had done that years ago.
yeah,
So I'm the expert for Scripps News, which used to be Newsy, right?
yeah,
So people call me for little things here and there. And with Newsy, I've done even politics with the uh, the Senate confirmation of Judge Ketanji Brown, right?
oh,
Justice. Let me clarify that for my sister,
yeah,
Justice Ketanji Brown.
yeah.
But at the beginning of the year, I had no plans. This is why I'm telling you, this is how things happen. I made no phone calls. I was minding my own business. I went to the casino gambling actually for New Year's Eve, which is something new. And I was just there, quiet. But I received an email from a news producer out of the blue from the Law and Crime Network. I got an email to my business account because, I actually have a business, Sunny Slaughter. She emailed me, and I'm looking at the email, Ron, and I'm like this. I'm like,
Really?
wait, I said, is this real? And she said, I'd like to have a conversation with you about being on the show. So we schedule a meeting, and January 2nd, I'm on the show.
Mm.
I'm thinking it's a one-off. It was breaking news, okay? I was like, it was the Brian Kohlberg, the murder of 4 Idaho students
Yeah.
in
Follow
Moscow.
that.
Okay. And then of course my little printer is not working. We get the probable cause affidavit 5 minutes before the show is on, and then I can't print it out. And there, she called. I mean, literally, it was an email.
Mm.
And I'm thinking it's a one-off. We get up, I'm on for an hour, and I get off the show because I had done news segments. They're quick.
Yeah.
But this was a whole hour. It was breaking news. I was scared, and I said, "Oh my goodness." We get off, and I'm not a makeup. I got my hair done. And okay,
Something that men don't have to worry about. Yeah.
I know. And then we hang up. So, I get off. She sends me a text. Sunny, you were so good. And and then she calls like 15 minutes later, we're wondering, can you come back on for the next hour? Like, can you be ready in I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, yes, I can put my clothes back on. And I was thinking, oh Lord. And then she called again.
Yeah.
And then she called again. So I often get a schedule on Friday. Today would be a day that I would get my email from the Law and Crime Network if they want me on, and I've been getting those since January. And then I select the days that I can be on the show. So I make the appearances, and then the cases are whatever. And people think that it's easy to do. It is actually not easy to do because we get a full script of first what we have to do for the show, prepare and lighting and all of that, and then we get a full line of information on the cases that the producers and everyone has worked up, and we have to study. And it is a lot of material. They have from the very beginning of the case down, and a lot of videos, a lot of news articles. It is not easy work. So if anybody thinks, oh yeah, I can do that, yeah, I was on TV before. I did background stuff, and that is still not easy. And then it just keeps, there's usually 3 cases, but anything happens in a news cycle. So you need to be queued up, ready to go on the 3 cases. And you also I have a television in my office. So you need to be doing the work that you do and following the news as it happens in real time. Yeah. And then, Crime Door Television, I got another email. These producers have found me.
Yeah.
And they just keep, and then Court TV.
Yeah.
So, and now I'm just starting with the Court TV, but we have conversation about who's on. And then I'm meeting all of these attorneys and things like, so it is unfolding all on its own. This is not anything that, but 17 years ago, this is what I said I wanted to do. I said it out loud with my girlfriend, who's an attorney, who used to do my PR. And I said, she said, we got to figure out how to make you the subject matter expert for the news. So
it all came about. So we have a short video we're going to show, and which gives the guests who's maybe in Middle East and where we're located now, because I'm in Dubai, and give them a sense of what the background of what you're doing. So let's take a look at that video. I love that. Love that video. I think maybe I need to put some music to mine, because that was cool. That was cool. I was doing my little thing over here.
Well, you saw me. And I have to do all my own. So I do my own PR.
Okay, cool.
I create all of my own things, like you.
That's amazing, because without a day, no, could not do it. But that's another story.
And a day is amazing.
Yeah. So, what advice would you give to people that's coming out of, say, high school or college that want to go into law enforcement? The brand is not strong, specifically in the U.S. In a lot of instances, it's not. What advice would you give someone that's idealistic and really want to make a difference?
So I actually do training nationally and internationally. And when people say law enforcement, I always say in the United States, let me talk about this specifically, there are 18,000 law enforcement agencies and entities.
Wow.
Okay. And people think law enforcement is the person that is wearing just a uniform. That
Yeah.
is a patrol officer. But
Yeah.
in law enforcement, there are very unique nuances and the field. It is the law enforcement profession. It is
Hmm.
very diverse, it is very broad, and it is very complex. So you have state, federal, and local law enforcement professionals. You have I do a class called Behind the Badge and Behind the Walls. There are law enforcement professionals that you never see because they work behind the walls.
Hmm.
If law enforcement is a very unique profession, the culture of law enforcement, which is something that I teach, focuses on the history of how law enforcement came to be.
Okay.
And in that aspect, in the United States of America and everywhere else, there's a lot of racial and complex nuances around those conversations. I teach this class because people coming into profession do not understand what that looks like and why it is very important to understand the profession that
Yeah.
you are going into from the beginning, and then how you want to do and how you see your career unfolding. So I would always ask someone, why do you want to become a law enforcement professional?
Yeah.
And I specifically use the term law enforcement professional because I want people to understand that this is a profession.
Yes.
It is very unique. There are so many different things that you can do. You can be a police officer, you can be a patrol officer, you can go up in the rank to become the chief of police. You can also work in the Department of Corrections. That is a part of the law enforcement profession. Okay. You can work for the IRS and be a member of law enforcement. You can work for any number of the three-letter agencies: the FBI, the CIA, DHS, Homeland Security, DOJ. There are
Well,
law enforcement professionals. That is a part of the law enforcement profession. So, what is it that you see yourself doing? That is the question I ask. Do you want to engage in the policy side of it? Do you
okay.
want to focus on something now, which is really big, the complexes of the internet and strategies and AI development? Do you want to focus on crime? Is there an area of crime? Do you want to focus on crimes against persons, which is what I'm an expert in? So you're thinking about domestic violence, sexual violence, crimes against children, human trafficking and exploitation. A lot of people always say sex trafficking. No, there is the crime of human trafficking and exploitation, crimes against children, missing children. There's so many different things in the profession. But what you always have to do if you want to join the profession, understand it, know who you are,
Mhm.
know what you want to do, know how you want to impact the profession, and have a why. Just saying that my family did it is not enough.
Okay. Okay. And just having the badge is not enough because there's a whole lot of nuances. So I particularly like the aspect of understanding the history of law enforcement because that gives a totally different vision. And in the U.S. now, it's not a lot of fact based. You know, everybody's got their own research and all those kinds of things. So in walking through that and giving a surrounding view as to what you went through with the letter agencies and the different roles and all of that. Because I'm thinking, I want to go to law enforcement because I want to get a badge and I want to do whatever I want to do. That's just one small minutia of the entire function.
And that's actually a dangerous way to think of it
Yeah.
because currently in the United States of America, the law enforcement profession is have been impacted substantially by not having enough individuals, officers at departments across the country, right? So they are having to increase the um, incentive through incentivized practices, offering individuals money to come and become a member of an agency.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
police departments. However, you have to remember, if you want to be on the street and working in a unit, okay, you have to pass the background check. And departments do it differently. You have to pass the physical rigors of it. You have to be able to pass firearms training. And I will say this, I had a conversation with a member of law enforcement on the recruitment side in the state of Virginia. And there were 80 recruits that went through, that signed up for the academy, got selected for the academy. In February, we talked, what is this? It's now going on June almost. In early May, there were only 30.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's not as easy as it looks.
Okay.
And people, you can get weeded out quickly. And the pay, remember, you are going to be shot at.
Yeah. Nope.
Harmed, all kinds of things.
Yes.
And law enforcement professionals don't make a lot of money,
Yeah.
which is why they have so many other jobs. It is high stress. It is hard on relationships. It is hard on the psyche. It is hard on families. It is not an easy profession at all. And there are very few women. So I teach a law enforcement leadership class. So while I was teaching a lot of things on like domestic violence, sexual violence, human trafficking, I have shifted over in my thought practices, in my thoughts and practice and focus. I am training the leaders of law enforcement agencies. So the chiefs and the deputy chiefs, and to get them to understand who you hire and how you hire matters.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, cool. So I want to get back to you and the impact that you're having, and starting from this point and now you're here. Who were essential influences in your life, having you keeping focused, or maybe you weren't keeping focused and they kind of corralled you in, or whatever it would be? Who would you identify?
Look, I'm not going to get emotional. The first person I want to say is my mom.
Okay.
My mom told me I could do anything.
Ooh.
And she was right. And she
Very cool.
She has been gone for 25 years.
Yeah.
So she's not seen all of this.
Yeah.
But I hear her constantly saying, you could do anything. I am not like anyone in my family. So, and then I have a lot of men in my life who have, because things that I do are largely male centered and focused.
Yeah.
And I have law enforcement professionals, and I watch people. I study people.
Oh.
Justice Ketanji Brown, her career has been phenomenal. And when you know the struggle of someone moving throughout their path and journey,
follow all of that.
You have to, you resonate with that. I have been the benefactor of conversations. I was able to have a private conversation with Harry Belafonte. And he and I, it was just the two of us. His wife wouldn't allow anyone to interrupt. And he was listening to me. And I was talking, and then he was giving me nuggets and nuances. And Amelia Boynton Robinson, who Bloody Sunday is named after, when she put her hands on my face and she said, "You are the future." I take those things in to my spirit. My children, we always think we have to learn from the ancestors, but I learned from the future.
Yeah.
Say, you can, you are, you will. And this is where the gaps are. I learned from watching you, and it is, you bring together people to talk about things. So who influences me? Everyone.
Okay. I see Stefan just
I
made a statement. Hey,
see.
Stefan lives life with passion and purpose.
Oh.
And I so love and admire her spirit. Thanks, Stefan, for
And
listening.
yeah, and I watched Shri. I
Yeah.
can't not. Shri during the pandemic when things were closed off and people had kind of closed minds but they were shut in, and he opened up the world to conversations around health and safety and uh, connection and the human spirit. I have watched the Obamas. I have Dr. Tom Ellison. He is in Alabama, and he has worked at with some of the greatest with the Surgeon General's office. He has intentionally positioned me in rooms and with people. I have been to the White House 4 times,
Mm.
and I'll be 55, so almost 2 years ago, Doc calls me up. That's what I call him, Doc. And he imparts a lot in a lot of young people. And he calls and he says, "What are you doing on the 4th of July?" And I'm like, "Nothing." And he
Yeah.
says, "Okay, well," he said, "So you're going to the White House." And I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, you're going to the White House for the 4th of July." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." I'm thinking I'm going with him. No, he just like throws me out to do things. I'm like in line. He says, "I got everything set up." And he says, "Happy birthday."
Wow.
So I'm standing there at some point with the First Lady, Jill Biden. I'm standing there with her. And he introduced me to a woman, Rear Admiral Clara Cobb. She was the Rear Admiral for the Region 4 of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, right? And she called me one day out of the blue. Dr. Tom introduced us. We formed our own relationship. She calls me and she says, "Sunny," and she calls me directly now. And that had never happened. And she says, "Okay, I need you to write this report on the state of Alabama because I have to talk to the Surgeon General." This is the Surgeon General when Barack Obama was the president, who is the current Surgeon General now. I'm like, okay. So she says, "I know you already have a lot of stuff. I need it in less than 48 hours. Yes, ma'am. And I did have a lot of stuff already done. And I
We'll
sent
take
it
it.
to
We'll
her.
clear the deck. We'll get it done.
And I sent it to her, and she's like, "Okay." So she said it was really good. I didn't change anything. She said, "So I sent it over to the White House." I was like, "What?" She said, "Well, I didn't want to tell you because I figured you'd get nervous if I told you that it was going to the Surgeon General. It's going to be his talking points for his first 20 city tour."
Wow.
It is in the presidential briefing of Barack
Yeah.
Obama. So those are the people that have, and then when somebody says, "Hey, we're sending you to the White House, and you can take 2 people with you. I figured you might want to take your kids." And this was during Trump's era. And I said, "What?" Because see, you got to be able to move in different kind of audiences and different kind of people, and no bucking. So we were at the White House.
Yeah.
During the Trump's now, and I had already met Trump when I was 16 years old because he had come to our office. So I actually knew who he was, but I actually been in a very small room with him before he was president. You cannot say no to people just because you disagree. You need to be in the room because what did you say earlier? You might need to change people's minds.
Yeah, you're right. But that would have been a tough one. That would have been a lot of contemplation as it related to that. So that was cool. So Sunny, I want to thank you so much for clearing your calendar. I know you've got 1,001 things that you're probably going to be doing for the rest of the day. But I thank you so much for being a guest on the show. Always been a big fan from afar. And I want to say this we both mentioned Shri. The concept of the CEO series came from the New York Times read along.
Wow.
Because I would sit and watch that, and Ade and I came up with an idea to start the same thing from a different angle somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
We're not reading anything, but it's more about leaders and their journey. I'm not interested in a lot of the different things about the job you have or the companies, whatever it is, but how do you get to be where you are today? And that's kind of the gist of what we do. So thank you so much for being a guest. And I want you to kind of hang on as we close out. So, but thank you so much. Thank you.
Ron, can I just say it was an honor. I was really so excited. You know, I do a lot of stuff, but this was such an important moment for me
Uh,
in my life, being on with you. I watch you, how you move about. I might not say anything, but I'm like, oh my gosh, Ron is there, Ron is there. So just know that I am watching you because I'm like, that's exactly what I want to do. I said I wanted to be on TV, and I'm watching you just so you'll know. Because I'm like, oh, he's in Dubai? He's in, yeah, that's exactly what I want to do, that thing right there.
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
watching you, Ron. We are
Yeah.
all watching you, Mr. Ron Thomas.
Yeah. There's a foundation under that. It's like the iceberg theory. A lot of stuff goes on under that, but that's cool. That's cool. So we're each other's fans. So that's cool. And this is what the show is about: spreading the love across the globe. So thank you so much. Hang on as we begin to close out.
Will do. Take care, everyone.
Okay.